Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, March 4th. Starting about the right time, maybe a little bit later today than I normally would like to start. I stayed up and spent most of yesterday, and this is basically the accountability section, finishing up Shadowverse. Boy, was it a nightmare, though. Like, it was 6 hours to do the final chapter that I was willing to cover, and they've added a new chapter since then. Otherwise, it would have been the final chapter, also. Or at least they've started the beginning of adding a new chapter in the solo mode. Boy, is it an easy recommendation to not do any of the solo mode content in Shadowverse. Although at this point it's kind of an easy recommendation to say don't bother to play Shadowverse. You're too late for that game. It's too old of a game, too established of a game. It's going in weird directions that really probably would only attract kids, but why even still play that, because it is because there is Yu-Gi-Oh! Here, which is going to be way more popular, and I think there's other kids card games that would be better. And we can see they're continuously adding updates to Yu-Gi-Oh! Here also, which that's nice. I may not have actually logged in yesterday. So we have 26 days left. There was 31 days, so yeah. It's still very much just not part of my standard way of thinking to go and to go into this every day and play. See, there's this advertisement for the selection pack, but I don't know if the selection pack is anything anything new as far as cards. And then they're promising new gates in solo mode, which I think the idea is that there's a real focus here to add more to solo mode. Yeah, this is still the same selection packs. I think the idea is to add more to the solo mode so that new players can just start with pre-built decks, which would make a lot of sense, honestly, because in that you have a better starting position for new players, certainly. I got all of my pre-built decks basically from playing solo mode stuff. Let's just quickly fast forward through all of this. So I guess that puts me in a little bit of a weird position, because now I have to just decide what I'm gonna do next. I know I'm gonna probably make some solo mode videos of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, but that's a new character. I haven't seen that one before. But yeah, after I do this Shadowverse, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Solo mode videos, I need to decide what game I'm gonna play next, and probably also schedule some more videos. Even though I have the automated scheduling process, or the mostly automated scheduling process, there's still plenty of videos that are not scheduled, and it's not like I am that mythical 6 months ahead on each of the time slots, which is really where I would like to be, is at least 6 months ahead. Ideally, there's really no reason for it to not be as far ahead as possible. like go as far ahead as YouTube's scheduling will let me go. Would be really nice. If I was 3, 4, 5 years ahead, that would be fine. Although, frankly, after about being a year ahead, that's when you start to think maybe I should release a third series instead of just releasing 2 videos. Alright. This definitely feels like a different solo player element, though. SP, I assume, stands for Solo Play Deck Challenge. This might boil down to something very different as far as... I think we could probably jump into this and just look without ruining anything. Yeah. That definitely feels like that is a very different challenge where you're just gonna have to duel and duel and duel. And a lot of the decks that you're going to be playing against here are going to be pretty recognizable decks here. Let's see. Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, Parasite Paranoid, Torrential Tribute, Bale Dragon. I would suspect what this is this is a very rough implementation of the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! That Yugi fought somebody with perfectly ultimate Great Moth. Then they fought somebody with Fury of Kairyu-Shin and Torrential Tribute. Then he fought somebody with Bale Dragon. And then he fought someone with Harpy Lady characters. And then eventually he would get to Pegasus, who fought with Toon Kingdom. So at this point, the Destiny board would be after the first season and when they start doing the God cards. And we can see Raw was fought then, and then a Red Eyes, and then a Blue Eyes, and then a Dark Spellion, which I don't know if he fought anyone there. And after that you get some field parts and magical hats. What it doesn't seem like, though, is that you getting a pre-built deck. So there might be a whole nother thing also behind that. Oddly, though, that's not solo mode content in the sense of story. And that is going to become an interesting issue. Because up until this point, the solo mode has been a story mode, and really there should be a separation between story mode and solo mode, and there isn't. So I don't know if there really is a lot of content to make specifically around this. And I think for my own education's sake, I will just jump into this and we will just see. Like, because it seems like you're not going to get a deck, there's not going to be anything here that's going to be a major helper when I try and win with the like when I try to win with my pre-built deck, which is just the crazy Exodia deck, that's going to be kind of a nightmare. I think we want to go with this. And then I think one of them has to be Gaia. And then we'll decide. I guess on this one. Since that is just a fusion monster anyways. Let's see. Continuous spell for piercing damage. Then in the turn. I looked at my code again as far as my program to launch all of the news things, and because of the first article potentially being favorited, the easiest way to adjust it, I found after just looking at it, was to just anchor on the second article instead of the first article. It would have been a little bit more complicated of rewriting the code, and UI Vision is not a particularly great software to rewrite code. So trying to keep everything quick and easy here, I just made a small change instead of a big change. Or arguably I made a botch job instead of fixing it the correct way. Where obviously the correct way would have to be that I'd have to scan for potentially multiple instances of the date being mentioned. And hope that I could anchor off of that. It would create a problem, I think, for sure. One thing I will say about this deck is it is giving you really good cards and potentially letting you learn things. The loner deck, which is very different from the cards that Yugi would have had in the anime. Let's see. We'll do 3 here, and then we'll call it, and we'll play 3 times. We don't even have to win 3 times. And I'm only doing this because there is daily quests, and I definitely would see how this would help with daily quests. Alright. This would discard this to add a polymerization. Level 4 Earth Rock. This would be a level 3 Earth Rock. Okay. Now I can polymerize. Summoning this, using this and this. That is a weird culmination or combination. Discard it for polymerization, even though I imagine there isn't a way to polymerize this and this. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to talk about as far as the accountability section. So we should just jump into the news. You contribute, summon this card. Oh, I don't know if I want to activate this effect. I think I want to say no on both. Let's activate the effect now, since that's a field spell. Let's see. Let's see if this works. Give me 6 cards. Summon this. And then special summon, I guess this. Using this. Actually, I should just cancel. Hey, there's a cancel button now. I do have to admit, Yu-Gi-Oh! is doing a very good job of just not bothering to make a big deal about the improvements it's making. Now, in all fairness, these improvements definitely should have happened. They should have happened way earlier and before the game was officially released. They really should have just said that this was the beta period. And oddly, I wouldn't be too upset if they did try to, like, just reset everything and say, yes, actually, this first season didn't count. This was a pre-launch season. We're going to relaunch. I'm not going to activate this effect because it seems like it just increases the defense on that character. And definitely this is too easy. Whatever. I guess the problem here is I'm playing solo mode, and so I'm just controlling everything, so I'm not finding a good point to have any breaks. Alright, let's double check and see if we actually need to do any more solo missions. Did the spectate live. We do need to duel in one more solo. Just to get rid of it. That's a daily quest. course, we also need to be playing ranked. So we'll play one more of these really nice loner decks. Which, this is not a bad idea, frankly. It should have been in here from day one. To just say, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of, like, legendary top tier decks to give you some ideas. So that you can see where you can get in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I have no idea what I should grab, but I'll assume it's that. This would not work. So let's do this. There is a heavy emphasis here around polymerization. And that is because polymerization was the go-to only way to bring anything out of the extras deck originally. It was supposed to be basically the only thing. Maybe that'll make me be able to summon something different. Nope. Yeah, I'm definitely sleepy at the moment. Ooh, Blastsphere. That's a card you don't see very often anymore. It's gonna destroy itself and do 2400 damage to me. But you would think Blastsphere would be a lot more useful than it is, considering how there are a lot of cards out here that are super expensive. Or super high in attack. Pokemon the Trading Card Live is apparently a game, and it was mentioning a hotfix and maintenance happening yesterday. Honestly, I don't think I even recognized that Pokemon TCG Live existed. To not get too salacious about it, at some point OpenCritic decided a couple days ago to send all review links from Russian websites, which instead of just like kicking them out completely or not doing anything, which honestly they should just probably not do anything and let the end user decide if they want to go to a Russian website and potentially give them ad revenue or some other kind of revenue. But they were sending it to some charity website instead. And it looks like they may have they've maybe deleted that. Like, they also previously had all Kotaku reviews being redirected to GMG Union. So they're getting very political for... I guess maybe that was it. It was going to GMG Union, and this has nothing to do with Russia at all. I'm sorry. I guess the news is just so Russia-centric, you just assume everything is Russian. But no, they were sending all Kotaku links to GMG Union, and now they're sending the Save the Children. Which honestly, it's just a bad move, in my opinion, generally. OpenCritic, has open in its name, and it's not being actually open to pick a side in a fight, and all of a sudden try and like propagandize people away from Kotaku. If people want to click on Kotaku articles at this point, they know that they either don't care about the problems with Kotaku or they're fine with them. It's hardly an unknown issue that Kotaku has problems as a review site. And inherently, the product that OpenCritic tries to offer as itself was it was supposed to be a more open, like, maybe not even open source, but a more open version of Metacritic, which was more around curating and controlling the narrative and controlling whose reviews counts and whose reviews don't. If OpenCritic is now, for a very disconnected reason, trying to punish Kotaku in a way that I imagine Kotaku would never even feel the pain of that blow. It's all very silly and just counterproductive. Because effectively what OpenCritic has done now is they've opened themselves up for a new competitor to come in and claim that they are going to be the free speech video game review curation site, because OpenCritic is clearly not the free speech open video game review site. OpenCritic's website also, just looking at its first front page, is pretty awful. Like, it jumps you into some stuff, and I guess in general they also have a news section, so I feel like OpenCritic is eventually trying to push to this idea of being a bait and switch experience, where they're going to try and get people to come for the Metacritic style experience, which isn't even being really emphasized here too much. And really, they're trying to get you to click on articles, and I imagine the articles, like, I can't even scroll up and down accurately because it gets stuck in this part when I move the mouse wheel. Like, I imagine these articles are just going to slowly move to the top, and actual game reviews will quickly become forgotten about. Well, not quickly, but eventually become forgotten about. So yeah, it's another example of a website trying to be a selectivist social justice warrior, or at least appear that way for a cheap pop, but at the end of the day, just moving their business away from their stated goals and doing the thing they promised to do in establishing themselves as a service website. If anything, I would say that's probably the number one thing management and bosses need to learn and become good at, is just keeping people on track as far as the stated goals of the company. Because there's clearly a increasing movement of SJWs getting power, some level of influence inside of companies and pushing companies to make statements or do things that are not worth even discussing or having a meeting around. Like, there's a much better reason, certainly, for OpenCritic to kick Kotaku completely out of their culmination of reviews. And if they had come out honestly at the beginning and said, we're handpicking the reviewers we're going to take review scores from, that would have been slightly different. And they kind of did do that. They definitely have a top tier of reviewers, and then they have all the others, but they definitely made it feel like it was actually all the others that they could find, as far as a really, really small review websites. There's going to be a running narrative. The ESA put out a global statement from Video Game Industries Associates on Ukraine. They seem to have also gotten it undersigned by several other entertainment cabals, associations, whatever you want to call them. It's short and sweet, I suppose, which is the way to do this. And since the ESA is basically a lobbyist group anyways, it would make a lot of sense for them to have been the only person to put out a message in the video game industry and just speak as if they have the authority to on behalf of everybody else. Unfortunately, nowadays, with every brand having a Twitter, every individual company has also put out a statement, and some of them are a little bit poorly written, to say the least, and that will always be the case. So yeah, the further part to that repeating story, or that repeated story, is maybe this is a little tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. I'm fairly certain that with SWIFT banking being blocked to Russia, there is probably very few remaining, if any, ways in which any company, video game company or otherwise, can do business in Russia. Like, any individual website could certainly still take new account signups from Russia, and even setting up geo-blocking to stop that might be more of a hassle and more of an expense than you would think. But any actual financial transactions have always been going through a fairly limited number of payment processors. In fact, if you start to think about international financial transactions, the number of payment processors probably gets incredibly small. So what's happening is a lot of companies are saying we're not doing business with Russia anymore, when in reality they couldn't have done any more business if they wanted to, because the payment processors were handling it. Sony and Microsoft, they're not banking institutions, so if somebody was going to make a new PlayStation Network account or Xbox Live Gold account, the credit card would have to be processed through some other service. So I don't know if that falls quite under the category of selectivism as much as it might fall under the category of just being forced to do something and then pretending like it was your idea. I imagine there is a decent chance that a lot of the companies that are coming out and saying they're taking a stand would not have come out and said they were taking a stand if they could have just kept on doing business. And at a certain level, particularly in the case of video game companies, it's hardly like you're punishing Putin by stopping people from making Xbox Live accounts or buying things on Steam or anything like that. There is much better reasons, and this is what I said on Wednesday, to potentially block and geo-block Russia just because of the massive amount of scams that have happened and money laundering schemes that have happened on Steam. And it would be very interesting, I would say, if Valve came back and said, you know what, while we were blocking Russian citizens and Russian companies from publishing games on the Steam storefront, we saw a significant reduction in refunds and complaints and scam games trying to be submitted, so much so that we're just going to make this a permanent thing. Because there is clearly, it's not just that the laws are very lenient and permit hackers and scammers to do whatever they want to any other foreigner outside of Russia. It's not just that the law permits it. The law permitting it has created a culture of it. So that culture needs to be pushed away, dissuaded, and stopped too. And that might take a very long time, and there need to be real repercussions, and just blocking Russian companies from submitting games in general might be the way to do it. Of course, what I'm suggesting is not too different from what I imagine is said in China, is that I imagine the Chinese approval censorship authorities go, well, there's just this culture of violence and unhealthy imagery and thoughts and ideas that permeate video games, and that's why we have to censor them and not allow very many of them into our country. So I guess at a certain point those sensibilities could be argued. Moving on, Bloomberg article here, Amazon's Twitch suffers an exodus from executives amid a strategy fight. The gaming platform is losing touch with its community of game streamers, current and former employees say. I would not for 1 second question that. That seems very believable. Although I'm not sure that they really were in great connection with streamers, because I don't feel like Twitch ever really started on the right foot with getting in line with the video game streamers that pretended like it was the site was supposed to be built around. There was never a large mass group of people leaving YouTube to go to Twitch, except for maybe around the like original launch. But it was more a case that you'd occasionally have somebody upset with YouTube for 1 or 2 legitimate reasons, usually, and then leaving for Twitch, and then finding Twitch to not really be much better, and then eventually either giving up streaming altogether or going back to YouTube or some other service. But there is also certainly a danger in Twitch saying, hey, we're getting back to our streamers, and then only focusing in on the top 10%, top 1% of streamers, and still not really doing anything for the small streamers, which you need that fresh lifeblood, in my opinion. And Twitch never seemed to have a real plan there. And whatever plan Twitch may have originally had for new video game streamers, it got thrown out the window as soon as the Twitch thoughts started showing up. At least that's the way it feels. Alright, well. I need this card. I need... Can't activate this? Nope. Alright, so I need to activate this card. And we're gonna special summon this. We're gonna do that by sacrificing this one and this one. Put that face up. We're gonna hope this lets me destroy one card. And meanwhile, I'm gonna protect my character because I might as well. Didn't work. Let's see. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle has an article here. The House of the Dead remake has been rated for the Stadia, hinting at a wider release. Which this would not be Typing of the Dead. This would be the actual shooting version of the game. And then I still am forgetting about the Aperture Desk Job game that came out a couple days ago. I did run the program once, so there's a couple articles here before we get into the bigger group of articles that will be out of order. The Game Shredders is coming to PC and Xbox Series on March 17th, according to Gamatsu. The Apathy Noragami Gouken Nana Fugishi release date trailer has been announced and come out. It's due out August 4th in Japan. I don't think we had a trailer on that before. That's a Gamatsu article. Bit Summit Crossroads is set for August 6th and 7th, according to Gamatsu. Dyschronia Chronos alternate episode 1 has been delayed for the summer for Quest 2 and to be announced for PC VR. Apparently this is also coming to Switch. It definitely feels like this is a VR game of some sort. Escape the room. And apparently they've been working on improving the graphics, which, yeah, this really goes to show where just better lighting and maybe an artistic tint over the entire game to make it thematically seem the same can improve things. Like, this room definitely looks very asset flippy, where this room feels like more polish was put into it. Whereas in this case, better lighting and reflections makes it feel a lot more realistic, where this feels very asset flippy again. Let's see. Gamatsu also has Potato Flowers in Full Blossom, launching March 10th, which is apparently a dungeon RPG game. Yeah, that's what that looks like. I'm going to try and save some time by not looking at trailers. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle now says F1 2022 will reportedly include supercars and crossplay. Check out that article if you're interested. Japan has bought over 2.3 million Xbox consoles in the last 20 years. A new report reveals the majority of those were Xbox 360s. The question certainly, while 2.3 isn't really a small number, relatively speaking, it is a pretty small number. And the real question has to come down to how many of these were sold to foreigners that happened just to be in Japan versus them being sold to actual Japanese people that are actually looking for something there that the Xbox might be able to provide that would interest them. Remember, there's a decent amount of American bases in Japan, so 2.3 million Xbox 360s being bought by like American soldiers does not in any way indicate any real level of success as far as getting your product sold in Japan. And I think Microsoft knows that, and Microsoft is trying, maybe not succeeding very well, but they're trying to make the Xbox brand sell better in Japan. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says, with no System Shock 3 update in nearly 2 years, Warner Spector has announced a new game. The Thief and Epic Mickey director is making an immersive sim under a new IP. Yeah, I would have to just assume that System Shock 3 is just in development hell. It's even kind of worse than your standard development hell because Tencent bought the rights to System Shock in May of 2020, and that pretty much means that Tencent would be the only people allowed to make any announcements, and the fact that they're not making any announcements means that they're probably struggling. So that the project basically has been bought out or handed off to Tencent, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tencent just can't make a AAA game, and that's really where System Shock should have been, is that it needs to be something along the lines of the Prey remake, or the second game but under the name of Prey. And since that time, Prey has come out and very possibly done it so much better that they're afraid to even try and compete. But yeah, I would have to effectively see a list of Tencent games to see for a second if they've even ever released a like a AAA game at all. Like they are getting subsidiaries, but these subsidiaries would also would have to have the free time to work on System Shock. Let's see. Special summon this. Discard this. I should have had this on the field first. See how this goes. Ah, that wasn't destroyed though, so that didn't activate that point. So in that turn. So here's the list of companies, according to Wikipedia, that Tencent owns 100% of. Funcom, Leiyu, I've not heard of, Riot Games, Shark Mob, Sumo Group, Turtle Rock Studios, Wake Up Interactive, 1C Entertainment, and then it has smaller percentages in Supercell, Grinding Gear Games, 40% of Epic Games, Pocket Games, C Games, Don't Nod Entertainment, and Bloober Team, and Marvelous and Netmarble, Bluehole. And then small ownership stakes in a lot of things. Is just generally known to be the majority shareholder for Fat Shark, Miniclip Clay, Jaeger, Bohemia Interactive, a lot of these names I don't recognize, Roblox, who doesn't know how much they own in that, Platinum Games, it's unknown how much they own in that. So suffice it to say, it has always felt like Tencent has tried to own parts of companies in a way to just buy influence more than to actually make content. And that certainly might be the case with System Shock 3, is that they bought off more than they could chew with System Shock 3, and they don't want to give it up because they don't want to lose the potential influence they can have. But I wasn't really seeing a company there that felt like it would have had the free time and the inclination of being able to make System Shock 3. As far as an actual list on Wikipedia of games that all those companies have made, is not a simple list, it seems. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has an article here. John Romero makes his first new Doom 2 level in 28 years to raise money for Ukraine. The new level named One Humanity is available to buy now, which in a funny way, I find that just kind of sad because I just feel like John Romero wants the big name behind making video games, wants a totally major important character behind video games has fallen by the wayside and just become this ancient relic of a game programmer who's seemingly doing nothing, and every now and then might just be putting out a new level for Doom 2, which that's crazy. He should have something better to sell if he's trying to raise money for Ukraine. Or he should be able just to sell like his old sell signed copies of Doom 2, or sell his old equipment or something that's as memorabilia. Yeah. I guess this is a video game equivalent of some old tired musician being forced to do a duet with an up and coming pop star. Because they ran out of money or because of some other reason. Let's see. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the amped-inspired snowboarding game Shredders is dated for the Xbox Game Pass and PC. The delayed game arrives later this month. Do they have a specific date? No. Not in this article, it seems. But yeah, Shredders might be interesting, but then it might also just kind of disappear. Let's see. DICE reveals plans to improve Battlefield 2042's current maps and release smaller new ones. Read that Video Games Chronicle article if you're interested. Yeah, I cannot do anything. A demo of Kirby and the Forgotten Land is available for download now. Also gives you a code that can be redeemed for items in the main game. So, there really is not any reason not to check that out. The Returnal Studios Housemarque's next game will be a new IP, which would make sense. Certainly, I don't think Returnal has a sequel in it. I don't think it was that popular of a gameplay style, and I don't think the story really went very far. This is a PlayStation-owned studio, and it says they're still concepting it out. Here's that tagged article from Video Games Chronicle. We'll just ignore that. Cyberpunk and Good Old Games owner CD Projekt Red has halted game sales in Russia and Belarus. Suppose it might be a case that I accidentally favorited the Destiny 2 article. Although it really wouldn't make sense that going down their pages, the favorite would just be stuck to the top always. But I guess I should turn off the ad blocker and see if there is some kind of button that I may have accidentally clicked that favorites an article. Because it also doesn't really make a great amount of sense that you'd have an article favorited for an entire week. But I wouldn't put it past Video Games Chronicles to do that. Elden Ring is the biggest non-FIFA or Call of Duty UK launch since Red Dead 2. Seems like Elden Ring is incredibly popular, in sharp contrast to Babylon's Fall. Although I really don't see where the hype is coming from, other than I guess Dark Souls players are still just crazy. I guess with the whole pandemic, maybe now would be kind of the greatest time ever to play something like Dark Souls. It's just going to be really difficult and take a lot of time. Let's see, next week's free Epic Games Store titles have been revealed. It's Centipede Recharged, Black Widow Recharged, and more are currently free. Oh wait, no. Centipede Recharged, Black Widow Recharged, and more are currently free, and City Skylines is next week's free game. The Pokemon Company is donating $200,000 to support Ukraine, which arguably is probably a very, very small amount of money, considering the Pokemon Company is doing it. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles points out, on its release day, Babylon's Fall had peaked at fewer than 650 concurrent players on Steam. The Square Enix published title is currently outside of Steam's top 50 best-selling games. This is just, I think it has to be taken as another example of Square Enix screwing over the developers and screwing over their own products by not really advertising them and pushing them. Like, I didn't even know Babylon's Fall was coming out, and I try to follow the video game news pretty closely. I also don't really know what the story or the idea behind Babylon's Fall is as an idea, as a game. I don't know if it's a RPG or a MOBA or what. We have the same story basically. Twitch is facing an employee exodus amid a culture clash, a report claims. Ubisoft has delayed the Settlers reboot again after beta feedback. But it's become clear to our team that the quality wasn't yet in line with the team's vision. Well, one would hope and assume that the team's vision was that the game would be good. But you never know. Maybe their vision was it'd be very bad or very full of microtransactions. The House of the Dead remake has been dated for the Switch with a new trailer, so that has been confirmed. I'm feeling really tired here. We may skip a lot today. Sony has quietly pulled Gran Turismo 7's Russian release, according to Video Games Chronicles. Gran Turismo's microtransactions are live, and the GT sports cars are now cost $40. They apparently were $5 cars. Before, that seems like a huge price hike. Activision Blizzard says it's facing difficulties attracting and retaining talent. I imagine they will claim that. They will claim that in shareholder meetings for the rest of their independent existence, and then those claims will disappear immediately as soon as they get acquired by Microsoft. That is more than likely going to become the excuse of the day with Activision Blizzard as to why things are not going well. Is that the bad press is causing them to have trouble to hire and retain talent. Not that I think they're being dishonest there. I think that it is probably true. Microsoft is suspending all sales of products and services in Russia. Again, that really feels like that's more likely that their payment processor wouldn't have allowed them to continue sales. Like, if anything, I think the whole idea of sanctions and limited sanctions is hard to implement and know whether you're accidentally potentially breaking the law or not. That was the reveal joke that in Arrested Development, is that one of the main characters, the father of the whole family, the grandfather, committed small amounts of treason by building houses for Saddam Hussein in the middle of sanctions. Although I don't know if that really would fall into the category of treason, although it probably technically does, giving aid and comfort to a declared enemy of sorts. But I think politics generally needs to be a little bit simpler for people to understand. So if you say you're sanctioning Russia, that should just mean all business ends in Russia. Period. But they want to give them, whether you agree with it or not, they want the politicians want to give the Russian government a chance to not immediately collapse and back down and say they're sorry. Effectively. And so they do these partial sanctions. Okay. See if this works. Summon. Sacrifice. Man, I am really sleepy. Like my head is just spinning. Like I'm that sleepy. I think we're gonna have to hope that we can just already have achieved the daily quest, and then I'm gonna have to stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In favor of just covering the news. Let's see, GTA 5's PS5 and Xbox Series X graphic modes and more have been confirmed. That's from Video Games Chronicles. EA is also pulling games from sale in Russia and Belarus. Yeah. I think a lot of companies are just kind of ignoring Belarus's assistance of the Russia invasion. And I would also say a lot of people are kind of ignoring the slight buildup of tension, of military might on the border of Taiwan and China. Although arguably it is fairly easy to ignore China's actions because they really just built up troops. They don't seem like they've actually pulled the trigger on the invasion of Taiwan, which is clearly what they're going to plan on doing, is that they're going to invade Taiwan and invade probably a lot of other foreign countries or separate countries slowly over time. Come on. That was certainly what was happening a lot when I was playing Shadowverse 2. Is I had to take a ridiculous amount of breaks. Darn it, this only kills face-up cards. I took like 5 or 6 breaks for that 6 hour thing, and I definitely was starting to get sleepy in the back half of that 6 hour video. Let's see, Gematsu Articles Super Zangyura for PS4 and Switch is now available in the West. What kind of game is this? Some kind of action game it's tagged as? Yeah, it looks like a platformer, maybe Metroidvania style game. Might be something there. Ninja Jajamaru, the Great Yokai Battle plus Hell, is coming to PC in 2022. This game does not look like anything that would interest me. I just have to assume it's a pretty old game being released. Let's see. Yeah, let's just take that win and call that a day. I'm yawning like crazy, and this is making me really sleepy. I'm should just go back to sleep. An inning on the win is not a bad idea. Of course, I may have to play a little bit off screen over the weekend. Let's see if there's actually any daily quests. Nope. I'm just gonna say Gematsu has the updated Famitsu sales. Elden Ring taking the top tier numbers for PS4 and PS5, although twice as many PS4 sales as PS5 sales. Pokemon Legends Arceus still selling pretty good, and then Atelier Sophie in 4th and 5th combined is fairly small for a weekly sales. Clearly in Japan there is a major influx of week 1, day 1 sales, but I assume that's also all the pre-orders being added and counted. It's kind of crazy how Pokemon Legends Arceus is coming and going extremely quickly as a Pokemon game, since now they've announced Scarlet and Violet. Gematsu has the same article as far as the Kirby demo and an overview trailer. The Sandbox puzzle adventure game Time on Frog Island launches this summer. Babylon's Fall launch and trailer and screenshots is available on Gematsu. Haven has updated to introduce same-gendered couple alternates. So you have a female version of the original male character, or a male version of the original female character. There was a level of romance elements in Haven, but I think the real problem with Haven was that it just, I don't think, had a real game behind it, and boiled down to a little bit of gameplay and mostly visual novel stuff. Wonder Boy Anniversary Collection pre-orders open on March 6th. Going to Gematsu. They have also the Gran Turismo 7 opening movie. Neptunia X Senran Kagura Ninja Wars for PC launches May 11th. A new gameplay trailer for the Switch version was also released. I feel like the Switch version has been out for at least a month or two, possibly 3 or 4, and the real question here is, are we really expecting any more like lewd content or adult content on the PC version? It's very possible, but if there is something special or extra added to the PC version, then it is just going to feel like censorship happened retroactively on the Switch. A run and gun co-op game called Spider Swords is coming to basically everything this spring. This is from WayForward as a company. Half dinosaurs, half spiders. This is who you're fighting, and which is a silly WayForward concept. We'll see if there's an actual game that people want to play. Have a Nice Death new higher orientation video is out. If you want to check that out. We already talked about the House of the Dead remake. And Boca Games Studios have Q&A video part 2 out now if you want to check that. And then GTA 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online for PS5 and Xbox Series details some new features and improvements. And here we've got a Chinese only game, so we have to say no to that. I don't think I'm going through all of these. I'm just gonna try and get to the GameDeveloper.com articles and be done with it. VR puzzle escape to room game for $10. See, I'm really just not gonna want to make any decisions today, so I'm gonna probably just put anything that even slightly looks good on the fall list. I'm also gonna leave the fall list games that I've opened up to clean up the fall list. I'm not gonna show them on the live stream, and instead I'm gonna just decide to do that off screen. I feel like I'm saying and a lot. Gunborg Dark Material looks like a frustration platformer. So I'm gonna say no to that. Hero for Hire doesn't look like anything. The Battle Never Ends. It's Korean only language. Goddess of the War Ashley is just a shoot 'em up game. Survival Quiz City. Put that on the fall list. Ryan's Rescue Squad. So the YouTuber Ryan has got now a cartoon. He probably had one for a while. And a video game based on that cartoon. It definitely deserves to be on the fall list just to see how people like it. 231 Seconds in Hell looks like nothing. Kung Fu BR looks like nothing. Malice in the Magic Tower, nothing. Crossing Guard Joe, maybe. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com articles. CD Projekt Red also halting sales in Russia and Belarus. Returnal and It Takes Two lead the 2022 BAFTA Game Awards nominations. Journey and Sky Developer, that game company, has netted $160 million to, I guess, fund their next game. Omida apparently is making a device for cell phones, controllers for cell phones. This is basically an advertisement. Sifu snags 1 million players in just 3 weeks. We already talked about Activision Blizzard struggling to attract workers. We already talked about Microsoft sales and EA sales. Alright. .3D Puzzle Woodhouse. Doesn't know how to take off your mask remastered. It looks like a generic visual novel. So no there. Yeah. And I think that's where I'm just gonna leave it. I'm going in waves of exhaustion, and really at just any point I'm just gonna fall asleep on stream, like if I'm not careful. So I know we didn't go very long for this stream, which maybe some people will appreciate that, but that's where I'm gonna end it. I'll probably look at a bunch of games and just leave the ones that I'm gonna put on the fall list open to show off. I will say that I did look like a couple of adult anime games came out this weekend, so no surprise there. But once again, they're pushed to the weekends. And I don't think I have anything else to say. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.